Hello everybody, welcome to the videos. The new season for the Premier League football is about to kick off. As a big football fan, I want to do something that's quite relevant to the topic. So what I choose here is a Premier League prediction dashboard. In the past, we always had a chance to forecast what the performance for our team is. You rank the team. At the end of the season, you want to see how good, how close is your ranking. Looking back, I feel like just by saying, okay, I get a 5 out of 20 correct, you want to actually measure more accurately about how close your prediction is. So, for example, sorry to all the Chelsea fans, last season they didn't make into the top 4 Champions League position. So, it's disappointing. But at the same time, they really underperformed by their league position. They finished 12th. So, if you didn't predict the Chelsea correctly, but you also need to adjust for the big dip in the performance. To do that, we have a mathematical way called chi-squared test. So this dashboard shows a sample dataset I used to create this idea. Let's have a look how we're going to play with it. For example, you can have multiple predictions throughout the season. There's transfer windows, summer, winter, there's maybe injuries. You may want to adjust for the team performance. Let's pretend to say we have a drop down. We select a prediction made for the 2022 season in September. I decide for some team. At the moment, I do not have access to all the dataset, so I just used a random data for the idea. Realistically, you could have an access to daily updates to the table, and you can always have a tracking record for your performance. For us, we can see in the end of the day, the statistical test at 95% level is about 10.1. If you get really close to the prediction, you should expect to see the number getting lower and lower, approaching 0 as the season goes towards the end. If you really can keep below the line, you did a very good job of forecasting the rankings. Now, this is also a good example for us to demonstrate what the tech stack we used behind the simple visualization. It's also a very good practice. People can use the idea in the backend, hopefully find it useful and implement to their own use cases. So we can have a look first what the idea I have for the structure. Let me open the windows. So idea first is we're gonna have the data source. The data source divides by 2 parts. So we're gonna have a scheduled workflow that's to do with the data source of our table. If you have an API, ideally great. I cannot find a free one yet. So I went to the BBC website. So it's a bit web scraping exercise to the BBC table. On the other hand, we'll also create an Outrex app as a user interface for our end user to make their predictions. It's not just fun for me to make predictions. I also want to see my colleagues how they perform against it. In both tables, we're gonna run the workflow. They will pipe into some kind of data storage. For us, we're gonna use a Snowflake. We create a landing stage, the landing data source table. From those, you can do whatever the transformation you want to pipe further down for additional join relationship. The last one, we can see we have 2 parts. So you have option 1 and option 2. Option 1 is something I want to probably build a separate video because you want to use table functions to calculate the correct joins. Mainly for today, I'm going to just quick demo for the Tableau side. How the Tableau, you can use LOD. Actually does the job very fast, very easy. So the first thing, let's look at the Outrex side, the input, the data source side. If you open the Outrex workflow, we have 2 workflows I created. The first one is the Outrex app. If we click on the interface tool, kind of rinse and repeat. There's multiple ways you can allow people to input in their rankings. I think for the easiest choice to maintain the data structure type, probably a numerical input. So you can set between 1 to 20 is the range, increment by 1. On the top, I ask the users to have their email address. For us, the information lab, we can use that to pass out the user ID, which we can also do role-based access to filter the viewer in the Tableau dashboard side. This workflow is the one I built to find data. So this data is going to the BBC website. If we can see the first browser, the idea is you go into the web page just like a public access page. You find a table. From that, you try to find your information. The download tool in Outreach help you to get all those things. What it does, it really just went to the backend, the HTML page, it download what the machine is supposed to see before it render for the human view. It does take some little bit regex, little bit passing to get the data out. So a few of the browser tools I added in between. The first one, just really about the top starting point. It's about finding the script component. So that's mainly the data content we're more interested rather than the formatting of the landing HTML page. After some formatting, I may not be able to see on the results, but the idea is you narrow down to the BBC primarily table itself. You're getting some repeating structure. As long as there's some repeating format, then it's possible to pass those out quite easily. Lastly, it may not be obvious, so we can see some of the rows. Those are the number I found. Turns out to be the numbers in the tables. So you have a win, loss, draws, goal difference, etc. Little bit additional transformation. Lastly, we can see we pass out the resulting table. Personally, I added 2 more columns. One, the latest update is from the website itself. So realistically, you may be able to run a much higher frequency in a match day because the results constantly changing. Workflow time is always good practice to keep track, almost like an ID field for your workflow. Now we can have a look where the data generated. We try to push into a Snowflake table. Let's go have a look in Snowflake. I did some passing already. Let's just run the results to see the demo table I created for data. So the first thing, that's the BBC table. As we can see, we have all the columns and the last 2 columns for the date times field for the rows. I've generated multiple rows for the data set. So ideally, I want to generate some kind of random pattern for the ranking so we can match out historically 2022 season for the performance for each team. Second table, I call it prediction. So it's more from the user and the user input. For me, I care is the ranking the user selected, the corresponding team. Username is used to track the role-based level access. App runtime, very similar. Previously to the workflow runtime, it's to check which prediction version the user used, which we can do joins later. Once we have the table loaded, then it's about how to combine the data set together. There's multiple ways you can do this join. I will probably do a separate video within the Snowflake only, purely use window functions. But for us, the quick way I found is much easier with Tableau. The relationship data model is much easier to link things up. Let's have a look at the design of my. First, you have the 2 tables. So you can see we have the blue side, which is the daily results table. You have the green discrete table. So blue table every day from the start season until the end of season. The green is your prediction. So in this case, you have 2 predictions, one from the summer, one probably from the winter transfer. The join we put in the orange. So the idea is for each of the day through the whole season, we're gonna attach our first prediction. So you almost behave like a join. We're gonna join on the teams field. Similarly, for the second prediction, we do the same thing to join every single day of the match. Once those done, in Tableau, turns out it's actually quite easy to do the calculation. You use a little bit of LD to fix it. Now, give people a bit easier understanding on it, I added a little bit context. So the way I will look at it, let's zoom out so we can compare the table a bit better. What the LOD calculation effectively is trying to do is the highlighted box. So for each of the results table, so 1st of August, for each of the user prediction, so our first prediction, fix on the team. So you try to do drawing at the team level. So for each team matched up, then you apply the formula for chi-squared test. The chi-square itself give you a measure. The measure itself, by default in Tableau, it's aggregated. So they give the final value will be the chi-square sum for that particular day compared to the prediction. With the calculation done, that's why we can go back to our dashboard. That's what I use to create the visualization chart. A little bit formatting later. We do filter out some of the dates. So for example, we want to make sure your prediction, your January transfer prediction only really apply to the date match day results after that date. There's no point like forecast backwards because the dates, the results are already known. So there's some little if conditions. But in the long run, I expect people probably make a few predictions, 3, 4, 5. So you have some kind of lines. Hopefully, you make a good prediction. As I mentioned in the start of the video, the lines should close towards approaching 0. Now, of course, all the stuff I have used here is more internal facing. There's none of those has a public endpoint yet. If someone want to try it, why not? This shows you how we can use Alteryx, Tableau, Snowflake together to get loading the data, store the data, transform, and visualize your final results. Hopefully this can be generalized a bit to your business usage. If you have any forecasting you need to do, any prediction, manufacturing mode, how many sales, how many quantity, any of those, you can actually plot it and use that to make a good visualization. So thank you for watching.